Where did our universe even come from? How did stars, galaxies, and life emerge from nothingness? Stop for a second and listen. Most likely you hear ordinary sounds. Car noise and wind outside the window. Maybe it's someone talking. But at this very second, far beyond the boundaries of Earth, in the darkness of space, events are taking place so powerful that a single such explosion can change the fate of an entire planetary system. Today, we will try to unravel one of the greatest mysteries of space.
Wherever you are right now, listen closely. What exactly do you hear? The steady hum of the air conditioner? The roar of cars outside the window? Or maybe the barking of the neighbor's dog? All of these are familiar sounds of our planet. But far beyond its boundaries, right now, a completely different reality reigns. In deep space, in darkness and silence, explosions of such monstrous power occur that if they happen for real, humanity would most likely cease to exist instantly. But this video is not about that, although it is related to one of the most massive cosmic explosions. Today we will try to understand where everything came from, how stars, planets, bacteria, animals, and finally humans, the crowning achievement of evolution, appeared. All of the above, as well as a multitude of information, phenomena, objects, and beings, are the offspring of a single formation, the vast, unexplored, mysterious Mother Universe. Let's start with the substance, whose origin has not yet been explained by orthodox science, the singularity. It was there, according to the proponents of the Big Bang Theory, that all physical forces, laws, and phenomena known to us today were once united. Now, the universe is a relatively densely populated place, filled with myriads of galaxies, constantly crossed by the trajectories of icy comets, teeming with asteroids, and made frightening by the insatiable pull of black holes. But almost 14 billion years ago, things were completely different. At that time, the universe was concentrated in an infinitely small and incredibly hot point, compressed by monstrous pressure, and eventually could not withstand the combination of these factors and detonated. What triggered the explosion? And where did this inexplicable region of compressed space come from? Surely these questions will remain a subject of debate for many generations of Earth's astronomers. But we move on, searching for the answer to the next question. What happened after the explosion? According to the widely accepted hypothesis, the primordial singularity turned into the starting point of the formation that is commonly called the universe. To put it briefly, the Big Bang hypothesis is based on three main pillars: Einstein's theories of relativity, Alexander Friedman's assumptions about the expanding universe, and the discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation. But what is the mechanism by which everything comes from nothing? How did an immense blaze ignite from a tiny spark? The situation was clarified by the American physicist and cosmologist Alan Harvey Guth. It was he who, in 1981, introduced the inflationary model of the universe to the world, supplementing Friedman's theory and instantly resolving many troublesome problems. Without going into complex physical calculations, in practice it looked something like this. Immediately after the explosion, literally in a matter of millionths of a second, space expanded many times over as a result of inflation. The early universe was filled to the brim with concentrated energy, which, as the rate of expansion of the fabric of space slowed down, began transforming into matter on a massive scale. These were rather strange times when the physical laws we know, which are quite different from each other, merged into one. It was at that time that the smallest of the elementary particles appeared. Quarks, gluons, protons, and so on. The ever-busy inhabitants of the young universe began to actively interact with each other. In other words, to collide. The result of all this activity was a sharp increase in the temperature of the universe. In those unimaginably distant and murky ages, the universe was as hot as 10,000 suns. But along with the lightning-fast expansion and hellish heating, there was another aspect, the irreconcilable conflict of elementary particles. So what was the essence of this cosmic soap opera? The thing is, the ancient cosmos was inhabited by two opposing camps, matter and antimatter. When they collided, these opposing particles, irreconcilable enemies, annihilated each other, meaning they turned into photons of light. Thus, antimatter was practically exterminated, and the physical laws immediately after the explosion fused together began to gradually separate into distinct groups, taking on the form we're familiar with. If this hadn't happened, the universe would be completely different, radically unlike the world we observe now. What happened next? The universe entered the era of nucleosynthesis. The temperature gradually dropped to acceptable levels, and under these conditions, the nuclei of elements appeared, which would later give birth to young stars. Boron, helium, deuterium, the building materials of stars, would appear much later. Meanwhile, the universe kept cooling down, and after about 400,000 years, the first atoms formed. If you think they immediately started creating those giant furnaces called stars, you're very much mistaken. Young stars appeared only after 800 million years. So what were the atoms doing for such a long time? They interacted with the cosmic microwave background radiation, which still permeates the universe. This is nothing other than the echoes of the Big Bang, which will fill our world until its very end. Later on, astronomers would give a rather grim name to the period between the cooling of the universe and the appearance of new stars, the Dark Ages. The period of active expansion of the universe lasts for about 1 billion years. During this time, stars began to appear, consisting mainly of the lightest elements, helium, hydrogen, and lithium. By the way, researchers have tried their best to find such stars, but not a single telescope has revealed this terrible secret to astronomers. Spectral analysis of ancient stars consistently detected traces of heavy elements. Therefore, the question of why we do not see the very first objects that appeared after the Big Bang remains unresolved. If everything had been limited to the formation of stars, there would be no planets at all. The universe would simply shine in vain, like a string of Christmas lights. But the stars became more massive and hotter, producing elements heavier than hydrogen in their infernal furnaces. Now attentive viewers exclaim, "But what's the point if they're all inside the stars?" Absolutely right, none at all. But if it weren't for one thing, huge stars, having reached critical mass and temperature, began to explode, releasing into the vacuum a huge amount of heavy elements such as iron, phosphorus, sodium, calcium, and others. These were the cosmic Lego blocks from which planets were later formed. As the saying goes, a tale is quickly told, but the work takes much longer. More than 7 billion years passed before a planetary system formed in the Milky Way galaxy near a huge ball of gas that we call the star we call the Sun, where one of the objects ended up in an exceptionally favorable position, in the so-called Goldilocks zone. On the planet, it was neither too hot nor too cold, so oceans could freely splash on its surface. Fortunately, by this time, the amount of space debris left after the formation of the solar system was gradually decreasing. As a result, the planets were no longer subjected to constant bombardment from outside, so their rocky bodies gradually cooled and solidified. And now we've come to the next unsolved mystery. In the lifeless oceans on Earth, anaerobic bacteria somehow emerged in a mysterious way. It's worth asking Dawkins about this. And they immediately started acting like they owned the place, filling the atmosphere rich in carbon dioxide with oxygen atoms. Billions of years passed and organisms appeared on Earth that breathed the enriched atmosphere, actively reproducing both in the world ocean and on land. The solar radiation generously showering the Earth turned out to be powerless, because oxygen atoms joining together in threes formed ozone, a reliable shield against ultraviolet. By the way, it's worth mentioning another significant point. Which chemical element do we owe the incredible diversity of the biosphere to? His Majesty carbon. It was precisely its compounds that contributed to the emergence of life forms and the maintenance of the most important life processes on the planet. In conclusion, let us remember that the appearance of Homo sapiens on Earth was accompanied by a series of cataclysms, including the sudden extinction of the dinosaurs. Who knows how the history of the origin of species would have turned out if the heavy footsteps of gigantic sauropods could still be heard on the planet, and bloodthirsty tyrannosaurs jumped out from behind every tree. In essence, we live inside a constantly changing organism whose development never stops for a single second. Moreover, every atom in the universe, including you and me, has passed through the prism of the creation of the macrocosm and is its offspring. The study of space, like no other activity, proves that nothing is impossible in this world. Godzilla invasion, asteroid attack, the strongest magnetic storm in the planet's history, a catastrophic supernova explosion. Stop. But unfortunately, this is not a joke at all, and the possibility of this event isn't limited to the past year. At the time of making this video, of course, no star has exploded yet, but what are the chances it won't happen tomorrow? Could this be not just another fake, but a very real possibility? Which star are we talking about? What will happen to Earth and all of us if something like this happens? So let's imagine a star bursts not far from our planet. The most fatal consequences of a supernova explosion for the surrounding world, including Earth, are caused by a powerful gamma ray burst. The least severe consequence is a significant reduction in the thickness of the ozone layer due to the oxidation of molecular nitrogen in the atmosphere. Accordingly, the Earth becomes defenseless in the face of ultraviolet radiation and bombardment by cosmic rays. This inevitably affects the planet's biosphere. Some scientists are convinced that it was a nearby gamma ray burst that contributed to the extinction of the dinosaurs. But phytoplankton and the largest living organisms on Earth, coral reefs, are especially at risk. And what will people feel and how will it affect us? A fatal increase in solar radiation. I don't even want to think about it. Naturally, after something like that, all food chains will never be the same, and the consequences will be absolutely unpredictable. In the worst case, the planet faces complete sterilization. Something like this will happen if the burst occurs within a radius of about 30 light years from us. Sounds scary? Absolutely. But what if I told you that this is a very likely scenario for Earth? And we even know the name of the ominous star that could very well become a Death Star for humanity. Today I will tell you about such a cosmic giant, and its name is Betelgeuse. What is happening with this star and what danger does it pose? The fact is that for several months now, scientists all over the world have been in a state of constant confusion because this red supergiant has been behaving very strangely, which, considering everything mentioned above, is quite frightening. What do we specifically know about this situation? A huge star, located 650 light years from Earth, has started to change its brightness. And the change was so drastic that the recorded parameters were the lowest in the past half-century of observations. What does such a significant and rapid dimming indicate? Really? About an imminent explosion. To begin with, what do we know about our neighbor Betelgeuse? It's one of the brightest stars in the Orion constellation, or rather it was before the era of instability began. The star is very bright. Even at its lowest luminosity, Betelgeuse is 80,000 times brighter than the Sun. The maximum difference reaches up to 105,000 times. If this monstrous star were placed at the center of the solar system, at its maximum estimated size, it would reach the orbit of Jupiter. Betelgeuse is about 17 times more massive than the Sun, but its volume is truly frightening. It's 300 million times larger than the Sun's. Meanwhile, Betelgeuse's diameter changes greatly during its pulsations. Sometimes it reaches 500 times the Sun's diameter, and sometimes it goes up to 800. We imagine red giants as huge spheres of relatively regular shape, made up of hot plasma and gases. But in reality, that's not quite the case. Up close, these giant stars look more like titanic clouds, with their matter seeming to boil in infernal cauldrons. The process really is similar to boiling, since the star is made up of convective cells, which in Betelgeuse are several times larger than those in the Sun. But why did the star's brightness change so drastically? Could this unstable behavior be a sign of an imminent explosion? The red supergiant had already exhibited strange behavior before, which is exactly what attracted the attention of astronomers on Earth. For a long time, Betelgeuse had been rapidly losing gas from its atmosphere and changing its brightness. However, not as drastically as it is now. Maybe this means there's nothing to worry about, and today we're just witnessing another period of instability. Unfortunately, no. Many astronomers are convinced that Betelgeuse is indeed preparing to explode. Moreover, this amazing event could happen within our lifetime, not in 100,000 years, as previously thought. This is a perfectly logical conclusion. The star is changing its luminosity and contracting, which means it is collapsing, preparing to explode. Or are there other reasons? One such explanation was proposed by scientists in 2009. Astronomers believe that the detected pulsations relate not so much to Betelgeuse itself, but rather to the gas and dust disk surrounding it. They say that it is precisely its variable state that we most often observe through telescopes. Is it possible to attribute all these metamorphoses to this? No. After all, the star is unique in its own way. Astronomers have the opportunity to study the surface of Betelgeuse directly, which has changed a lot over the past year. Its temperature has become much colder, and the star itself has noticeably shrunk, which are indirect signs of a possible upcoming explosion. After all, giants at the end of their life cycle lose mass abnormally. In addition, as an alternative, scientists are preparing humanity for the fact that right now, at incredible speed, a cloud of dust ejected by the dying star is flying toward us. So how do supermassive stars die? According to widely accepted models, the scenarios of their demise are described in quite some detail. The beginning of the end is precisely marked by changes in their luminosity, size, and mass. This happens because the hydrogen runs out, and the nuclear reactions themselves die down. These scenarios differ slightly. Not very large stars end their lives as white, yellow, and brown dwarfs. Supermassive ones, after exploding, turn into neutron stars or black holes. What will Betelgeuse become after it dies? Judging by its mass, which is 17 times greater than the Sun's, it could very well become a black hole, absorbing everything around it. Such a scenario poses an additional danger to Earth, since right now the nearest black hole is 28,000 light-years away from us, at the very center of the Milky Way. And the newly formed one from Betelgeuse could literally end up right next to us. So what will happen if the explosion does occur? Of course, if the Sun were to die, our planetary system would inevitably be destroyed. But Betelgeuse, as already mentioned, is about 650 light-years away from Earth. Therefore, the consequences will not be as significant and will begin with visual effects. Betelgeuse will become the brightest star in the sky, outshining the moon and being visible even during the day. Since such explosions near our planet occur with remarkable regularity, about once every 240 million years, it is known that among other consequences, the temperature on Earth can increase significantly. Naturally, this will have a negative impact on human life, but there is also good news. If we assume that Betelgeuse explodes right now, it would take 6 million years before the shock wave reaches the solar system. Nevertheless, the event would allow astronomers to learn a lot about the life and death of stars, which would become the basis for further research. And it's too early to draw any conclusions because essentially we've only been observing Betelgeuse for a few centuries, which is nothing compared to the age of the star. By the way, speaking of age, it's possible that we're overestimating it, and Betelgeuse is much younger than 8.5 million years old. According to one hypothesis, it was once ejected from the Orion Association.
Группы горячих гигантских светил.
And a second, much smaller star became its companion. Over time, Betelgeuse absorbed its companion and gradually rejuvenated itself with fresh material from its captured companion star. In any case, the star is classified as a variable, meaning an object whose brightness changes over time. Therefore, most likely, just as humanity didn't get the much anticipated sensation in the troubled year of 2020, it won't get one in 2021 either. Maybe, fortunately, one thing is certain. Betelgeuse will explode with a 90% probability, but it will be thousands of years before that happens. We are living in truly historic times, with many events taking place that will definitely make it into history textbooks. But while we are used to such things usually being something bad, like wars or the pandemic that has been spreading around the world for over a year, something happened recently that can truly be called a historic breakthrough and a huge step forward for all of humanity, for humanity as a whole and for the field of space exploration in particular. February 18, 2021 became a truly significant day. Something that millions of people had been following for half a year was successfully completed. The Perseverance rover, or in other words, Nastoichavost, finally completed its journey to the surface of the red planet, and on this day at 11:55 p.m. Moscow time, everyone was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. Perseverance can rightfully be called the heart of NASA's Mars 2020 mission. The Wonder rover launched from the coast of Florida on an Atlas V rocket on July 30, 2020. The rover managed to land safely in the Jezero impact crater, located on the western edge of the Ascides Plain near the eastern edge of the Syrtis Major. Interestingly, the crater itself was a lake back in the era when a system of river valleys was forming on Mars. The name Jezero itself translates as lake and is present in many Slavic languages, such as Serbian or Slavic. Its name, which in Russian is Nastoichavost, was given to the rover thanks to a nationwide student competition. The remarkable and proud name was invented by Alex Mather, who was a 7th grader at Lake Braddock Secondary School in Burke, Virginia at the time. Perseverance is a strong word, said Thomas Zurbuchen, the Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, in March 2020 during the rover naming ceremony. It's about making progress despite all obstacles. And the very launch of the rover was already an amazing demonstration of that same perseverance and the ability to overcome obstacles. I hope you remember that getting to Mars isn't that easy, and it's not just about the distance. There is a so-called launch window, a moment when the distance between Earth and Mars is reduced to a minimum. Such windows appear only once every 26 months for missions to Mars, so NASA was determined to launch the rover from Earth on time. This is already a difficult task, which became even more complicated due to the coronavirus pandemic, which forced changes to equipment assembly and testing protocols, as well as team safety procedures. But you know what? They did it. The rover landed successfully and has already sent 2 color images from the surface of Mars. The first is a selfie of its wheel. The second is of the surface of Mars, which turned out to be not so red, but rather gray. Why is Perseverance so important to us? After all, it's not the first rover to visit Mars. So what makes it so unique? And what is its great mission? The innovative Mars rover was developed by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and without exaggeration, this rover can be called the most advanced and modern machine ever created on Earth. The equipment is truly unique and will allow it to carry out very ambitious and important tasks for the future exploration of Mars. After a series of tests, the Mars rover will hunt for signs of ancient life on Mars, collect and store rock samples for future return to Earth. But one of the main tasks is to prepare for the future landing of astronauts and to test methods of producing oxygen on Mars. It also includes improving landing methods, accurately determining Martian weather, and much, much more. Perseverance will thoroughly study Martian rock and rock formations using various high-tech scientific instruments, including numerous spectrometers, high-resolution cameras, and a ground-penetrating radar. One of the rover's 7 instruments, called SuperCam, will scan rocks with a laser and measure the composition of the resulting vapor. Using a drill at the end of its long robotic arm, Perseverance will collect about 40 samples from especially promising areas and seal them in special tubes. Then this material will be delivered to Earth as part of a joint campaign by NASA and the European Space Agency, possibly as early as 2031. A breakthrough innovation was also the inclusion of an unmanned robotic aerial vehicle, which was named Ingenuity. This drone is equipped with cameras and will carry out a reconnaissance mission, flying over Mars and transmitting its precise and high-quality images. Like other NASA rovers, the 6-wheeled Perseverance is largely modeled after its predecessor, the Curiosity rover, which landed in Gale Crater on Mars in August 2012. It is still operating to this day, but Perseverance features some amazing innovations, opening up completely new possibilities for humanity. Perseverance is a few inches longer than Curiosity, and weighing 1,025 kilograms is almost 136 kilograms heavier. The set of scientific instruments on the 2 rovers also differs significantly. But the 2 Mars rovers have the same basic design and the same type of nuclear power source, and they use the same strategy to land safely on the red planet. Are you interested in numbers, statistics? I'm sure that under normal circumstances you would say no, but not when it comes to Perseverance's unique statistics. A special strategy for delivering rovers to Mars, pioneered by Curiosity, sounds like something out of science fiction. Perseverance entered the Martian atmosphere at a speed of about 19,500 kilometers per hour, and after a few minutes, deployed a 20.5-meter-long parachute, continuing to move faster than the speed of sound. But the Martian air is only 1% as dense as Earth's, so the parachute couldn't slow the rover down enough for a safe landing. That's why Mars 2020 used a rocket-powered sky crane, which lowered the Mars vehicle to the surface on cables and then flew away to crash land at a safe distance. To everyone's delight, NASA received the message that Perseverance had landed safely on February 18th at 3:55 Eastern Time. Let me remind you, that's 23:55 Moscow time, about 11 minutes after the landing actually took place. That's exactly how long it takes for signals to travel from the red planet to Earth right now. This news sparked wild celebrations at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California, which is managing the Mars 2020 mission. Undoubtedly, along with the excitement, there was also a fair amount of relief, because success today was far from guaranteed. For decades, only about half of the missions to the surface of Mars have ended successfully. And the landing site of Perseverance on the lake bed could be quite dangerous because of its rocks, sand dunes, and boulder fields. NASA specialists accomplished almost the impossible. The rover's landing ellipse was only 0.7 by 0.6 kilometers, compared to 7 by 12 kilometers. In Minsk, 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 allowed Rover to deploy its supersonic parachute at the right moment. Another technology allowed the sky crane, a kind of rocket backpack for Perseverance, to assess the landscape of the lake and autonomous days, to move around potential hazards during descent. These landing technologies worked exactly as planned, guiding Perseverance to a perfect landing on a safe, flat part of the lake's surface. And the rover seems to have gone through all the tests, remaining in excellent shape. Perseverance has already sent home the first image of its new surroundings, and checks of its integrity and onboard systems have revealed no cause for concern. Curiosity was originally designed to assess the habitability of Mars, and there is plenty of evidence that Gale Crater could have supported life billions of years ago. Perseverance will take the next step in that direction. According to the mission members, Jezero is a great place for this kind of work. In the crater, located about 18 degrees north of the Martian equator, there was once a lake the size of Lake Tahoe, as well as an ancient river delta. In addition, Martian orbiters have seen clay minerals at the bottom of Jezero, which form in the presence of liquid water. Remember, at the beginning of the video, we asked what awaits us next. As it turns out, a lot of interesting things. Once on Earth, the samples will be studied by scientists for decades. After all, researchers are still studying the moon rocks brought back by NASA Apollo mission astronauts half a century ago. Here's what Bobby Brown, Director of Solar System Research at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said about this at a conference on February 17, on the eve of the landing. It's ambitious. It's a challenge. This is a scientifically justified goal that we have been striving for over decades. And now it's within our reach. Well, let's hope that's exactly how it will be. Perseverance has a great chance to make history in the study of Mars, with many fantastic breakthroughs. Today we will visit a very distant planet, barely visible against the emptiness of space through a telescope. This is Uranus, a very distant and cold world whose existence humanity did not suspect until the end of the 18th century. The planet was named by analogy with the neighboring planets, more precisely from the point of view of their mythological relationship. Saturn is Jupiter's father, and Uranus is his grandfather. But what will an Earth traveler see first on Uranus? Approaching Saturn's phlegmatic neighbor, a space tourist will discover rings around the planet. Of course, they are much poorer than Saturn's. But still, there are as many as 11 layers. The uniqueness of Uranus is that it spins lying on its side. Most likely, this is the result of a massive collision that happened a long time ago. Moreover, the object that knocked Uranus over must have been larger than Earth. By the way, this also caused the planet to rotate in the opposite direction around its axis. A titanic ocean of hydrogen and helium is the first thing a traveler from Earth would encounter on Uranus. So don't forget to put on a special spacesuit. Immediately, a person would be embraced by hellish cold, since the temperature beneath the cloud layer reaches minus 200 degrees. This figure is not very far from absolute zero, which is minus 273 degrees. Traveling across the planet is quite boring and takes a long time. Its diameter is 4 times larger than Earth's and is 51,120 kilometers. The traveler will encounter monotonous landscapes consisting mainly of scenes of the ice ocean. But what is the most amazing thing about this gas giant? Due to its unique rotation, sunrises and sunsets on Uranus have no rival in the solar system in terms of duration. If a tourist decides to enjoy this spectacular sight, it's best to travel to one of the planet's poles. There, he will have to stay for 42 years because that's how long a day lasts on Uranus. For 21. Earth years, the bright but very tiny star we are used to calling the Sun, slowly crawls toward the zenith. Then it takes just as long to descend back to the horizon. Its tiny size is understandable since the distance from the Sun to this abandoned world is about 3 billion kilometers. That's why a year on Uranus is equal to 84 Earth years. Basically, that's the average human lifespan. So in this world, the age of Earthlings would never exceed 1 year. At 1 year and 2 months, someone could be considered long-lived. But if a tourist's vacation is limited, there are places on the planet where a day is shorter. For example, at 60 degrees latitude, day and night last only 28 years. At 30 degrees latitude, a Uranian day lasts a mere 14 years. Uranus is that amazing and unpredictable. Even a day in different places on the planet has different time frames. You can admire Uranus's moons to your heart's content, since there are 27 of them. Of course, that's not as many as Jupiter's 64, but there's still something to see. The moons of the planet are even more devilishly cold than Uranus itself. These are dead worlds, millions of years in silence, spinning through space. Titania is the largest of them, with a diameter of about 1,500 kilometers. But visiting it is not recommended. The temperature there approaches minus 213 degrees. The ice it is made of has been turned by the terrible cold into a hard mineral, similar to diamond. When leaving Uranus, don't forget to leave a coin there, so you'll be sure to return to this amazing world. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and be amazed by the knowledge of those around you. Giving this video a big like will help us release the next episode sooner. Travel with us, we're discovering the universe in a new way.